When people catch something scary with sharp teeth and completely unknown to science, it can get on your freaking nerves. Every newly discovered monster serves as a reminder that something even creepier might be lurking in the waters of the world's oceans. Although, just how horrible can the creatures made by nature be? And is there any limit to that? In February 2019, an angler, T. Hawken, pulled a creature out of Mary River in Australia. It looked like a monster from a horror movie. 6 inches long, with no eyes, but with razor-sharp teeth which looked like glass. Yes, the monster could also bite. You wouldn't want to touch it, and the angler had to try really hard to get rid of the strange creature. Apparently, it got stuck to the lure, so the angler had to use pliers. It was the only way, because it was impossible to shake the creature off. It looked like the angler had caught some kind of alien. Turned out it wasn't that bad. The monster was most likely a type of worm goby, that is, a fish that has quite a few similar relatives with interesting features. For example, they can survive out of water for a considerable time by taking air into their bronchial chambers, and most likely they can even move around on land. Such creatures are amphidromas, that is, they regularly migrate between freshwater and the sea. But unlike similar animals, they do so not for the breeding purposes. In their lifetime, amphidromous creatures can travel more than 62 miles. That's a lot for someone with no legs and which is not a snake. Gobies breed in freshwater but feed and grow in saltwater for several months, after which they return to freshwater to keep feeding and growing, and then breed again. As a result, one can find them in all kinds of water, whether it's brackish, salt, or fresh. And yes, it may seem that the ugly way this fish looks is the result of some nasty genetic disease, though actually, that's just the way it looks. And it works for the fish. As ugly as the ridges on its face may be, they're covered with sensory structures that help fish navigate the surrounding silt. This also explains why the fish has no eyes. As in the deep sea, vision is not particularly useful in murky water. Some gobies also have very sensitive fins. I'm serious. Scientists have analyzed them and concluded that the fins of a round goby are sort of like human fingers. The research team collected several gobies from Lake Michigan and brought them to their lab, where they set up a fish tank filled with objects of various textures. The gobies were released into the water and the scientists started to observe them. Turned out that the fish used their fins to identify different surfaces. In some cases, the gobies even brushed their fins over different materials, similar to a person who's grazing a surface with his hand. Even more impressive is the fact that these fish were able to feel very small details. Even though their fins aren't like our limbs, their evolutionary purpose is different. Actually, I just realized something. Usually people try to have as little contact with the scarier fish as possible. Maybe that's why gobies that look like creepy monsters aren't caught often for food. But not in Japan or Thailand. Another type of goby, or warasubo as it's called in Japanese, is a unique creature that can be found in Japan's Ariake Sea, although it's also found in other parts of Asia. It looks scary with its large head and long body and its teeth. Well, that's quite a creepy creature. In Japan, however, this fish is a delicacy that can be cooked in many different ways. Warasubo is grilled, dried, ground into a powder to make a hearty soup, and even used as an extra flavoring to a cup of hot sake. It's said to be a very flavorful treat that only gets tastier as you chew it. Actually, the Japanese use scary fish much more often than one might imagine. Take the city of Saga, for example. It attracts about 15 million tourists annually with its balloon festival, but this is not enough to support the weakening local economy, and so the city decided to use carnivorous, alien-looking snakes as promotion, or rather, short horror movies about them. On the one hand, the gobies I just told you about are perfectly harmless, although they indeed look creepy. On the other hand, the idea to film movies is crazy enough to actually work. Japan has a thriving horror culture, and the idea of confronting the alien of Ariake might resonate with domestic travelers. Actually, it's already working. The ads generated about $1 million. Not only the Japanese have noticed the resemblance of the gobies to the famous aliens, on social media, many users have compared the fish to the xenomorph, the monstrous creature from the Alien movie and its sequels. If you think about it, the gobies really do look like baby xenomorphs, and their third stage of development. Yes, the ones that burst out of their host's chest, leaving a bloody mess behind? Fortunately for us, gobies are much smaller, feed on small fish and crustaceans, and reproduce without human help, even if they meet them along the way. And no, the creators of Alien were not inspired by gobies, even though these creatures are freaking weird and incredibly creepy. The movie's so impressive that there are many documentaries and books that explore the origins and sources of inspiration that led to the final product. For example, screenwriter Dan O'Bannon's childhood was one of the sources of inspiration for the creators of the iconic movie. Growing up on the family farm in Missouri, he was very fond of insects, which is reflected in the metamorphosis throughout the film, during which the alien gradually becomes more powerful. O'Bannon also suffered from Crohn's disease, an inflammatory bowel disease. The screenwriter described the experience as feeling like something was bubbling up inside and trying to get out. Does this sound familiar? Xenomorph eggs were directly inspired by female reproductive organs, slightly modified to avoid censorship. Ridley Scott is said to personally make sure it wasn't too obvious to the viewers, and yet remained realistic enough to induce fear. Facehugger, the parasite that attaches itself to its victim's head to incubate an embryo, is based on the bones and muscles of the human hand and male genitalia. A spring-like tail has been added to emphasize its quick movements. Finally, the full-grown xenomorph was based on the 1976 artwork Necronum 4, created by the Swiss surrealist artist Hans Rudi Geiger. This work depicts a female figure made up of various parts of insects, vertebrates, and even fossils such as sea lilies, which are about 300 million years old. The alien's life cycle from egg to queen, shown in the sequel, can be seen as a direct reference to the life cycle of real animals, and more precisely to a particular wasp family. Ichneumonidae are parasitoid wasps that feed on insects such as caterpillars or beetles. The adult female wasp lays eggs inside the host, and once inside, the eggs grow and turn into larvae, which then eat the host from the inside out. Somewhere along the way, the host dies or remains in a state close to death, until finally, the little wasp spins a cocoon around or inside the host and then emerges from it as an adult wasp. But let's leave the fictional xenomorphs alone and get back to the real gobies. If you've already wondered why you've never heard of these creatures, there's a perfectly logical reason. Most of them can be pretty hard to catch, except for the ones that are eaten in Japan, I guess. So in order to study these fish, you really have to catch them first. But traditional research equipment doesn't help when it comes to the muddy bottom. So some gobies remain a mystery to scientists, such as the worms of death that live in the rivers of the Northern Territory in Australia. What we know about other species of this family is that they feed on crustaceans and small fish. However, very little is known about their breeding and reproductive habits, as well as habitat and behavior. Researchers have even launched a science project involving citizens to try and learn more about this elusive goby species. They're asking people to contact scientists if they encounter the mysterious gobies or accidentally catch them. And it's not really that surprising. The last 3 goby species were identified only in 2021. Can you imagine how many other unknown species are swimming out there? Even the very fish we started the video with may be an entirely new species, but it's simply impossible to determine that from the video. Well, discovering new species isn't something that happens only to gobies. At the Natural History Museum in London alone, scientists recorded a total of 351 new animal and plant species in 2022, from the oldest known Stegosaurus in Asia to frogs smaller than a coin. Although these creatures may have already been observed by people around the world, in 2022 they were officially named, described, and put on all sorts of registries to help protect them for future generations. The discoveries are especially impressive when you consider that most of them are invertebrates. These small creatures make up more than 90% of all described life forms on Earth. Among the discoveries are hundreds of new species of beetles, moths, stick insects, and wasps. There are also new fish, frogs, and even minerals. Discovering new animal species may call to mind the images of scientists digging in the dirt or cutting paths through dense, wild jungles. But sometimes making a discovery is as easy as getting a frog to open its mouth and find out what it was eating. That doesn't mean you have to immediately check the stomachs of every frog you come across. However, that's exactly how a new species of tropical ant was discovered. It was found in the stomach of a frog from the Dendrobatidae family. It's a bright orange amphibian that lives in Ecuador and is known for its love of ants. Since ant-eating frogs hunt for bugs in tiny and hard-to-reach places, scientists use them as a tool to get to places they can't reach. People catch frogs and flush their stomachs, causing the amphibians to vomit whatever was inside them. That's how potential treasures are discovered, such as new species of ants. There is, however, one nuance. As the only ant specimen is a dead one that was taken out of a frog's stomach, scientists know almost nothing about it. And if you're suddenly worried about the frog, don't be. Since many amphibians are endangered, any research with wild frogs should be done carefully and only by real experts in the field. For example, to flush the frog's stomach, scientists insert a soft tube into the amphibian's mouth and gently fill it with water, forcing the frog to puke everything it's recently eaten. The contents end up on a tray, and afterwards the frog can be returned to its natural habitat safely. Hopefully they at least give it something to eat afterwards. By the way, this is not the first time a new species has been found in the stomach of another animal. For example, the snake Geophis dunai was discovered in the stomach of another snake in Nicaragua back in 1932. Oh, I almost forgot. It seems like the ant inside the frog had good company. Aside from the ant, scientists found several other insects, so far unknown to science. Naturally, it's not just the stomachs of snakes and frogs that might reveal new species. Deep beneath the surface of the earth lies a hidden realm that most of us will never see. It's a place where weird creatures live in such a dark and isolated environment that we know almost nothing about them. One such creature is the millipede, now known as E. Persephone, found nearly 200 feet below ground. Scientists didn't just randomly stumble across it. They bored holes in the ground and then lowered a trap made of plastic pipe filled with wet vegetation there. The millipedes would crawl in and get stuck inside. That's how E. Persephone was found. What a nice idea to name an underground creature with a bunch of legs after a beautiful ancient Greek goddess. But E. Persephone is remarkable not only for its name. It has 1,306 legs. First described in 2021, these millipedes reach 3.7 inches in length and about 0.04 inches in diameter. Yes, they're just tiny. But they have between 198 and 330 body segments, and more than 1,000 legs. Other distinguishing features of the new species include massive antennae, shortened legs, and the absence of eyes. The millipede is perfectly adapted to subterranean life and most likely feeds on mushrooms. While the number of legs E. Persephone has may seem astronomical, it's probably not even the limit for millipedes. Many species start their life with only 8 legs. But as they shed their skin and build up new body segments, millipedes can add more legs too. So perhaps if E. Persephone had lived on, it would have gained a couple of dozen or even hundreds more legs. But why would anyone need so many legs in the first place? I mean, yeah, sometimes I wouldn't mind having an extra pair of arms, and yet that's no reason to grow them on purpose over millions of years. Scientists suspect that this number of legs allows E. Persephone to walk on 8 different planes at once, making it easier for it to wind its way around obstacles such as rocks and pebbles. Now tell me honestly, who's creeped out by this multitude of legs? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? Actually, many people can't stand millipedes, and encountering a household species like the house centipede can cause real panic and urge you to immediately grab a slipper or whatever else you have within reach. Though house centipedes aren't just absolutely harmless, they are actually useful because they eat cockroaches, spiders, moths, termites, ants, in short, everyone you definitely don't want to see in your home, plus they don't carry any diseases. So try to let the house millipede go in peace next time. Though to be honest, when I saw one in the bathroom, I didn't go in until it was gone. If the millipedes looked nicer, it'd be easier for people to appreciate what they do. Like they appreciate goats, for example. In California, a team of firefighters teamed up with goats to create safe zones around homes threatened by fires. You'd think, well, how could goats be possibly useful for firefighting? It's pretty simple. The animals eat something that serves as fuel for fire, that is, dried vegetation. The result is environmentally friendly and relatively inexpensive protection against fire, with goats strategically nibbling on plants in a way that prevents them from growing back. An area to be cleared of plants is secured with a special fence around the goats until the area is safe. Then they do the same at a new site. But goats can also be on the other side of the law. In Telangana, India, police arrested 2 goats for eating saplings planted by a non-governmental organization, Save the Trees. The animals managed to destroy 150 saplings. Maybe they just wanted to save people from fires. Whatever the case, activists caught the culprits red-handed and turned them over to police. The goats were then taken to the nearest police station and only released after their owner paid a $12 fine. But that's nothing. In Nigeria, police detained a goat on suspicion of attempted armed robbery. Police took the animal to the station, claiming the goat was actually an armed robber who was trying to steal either a Mazda or valuable stuff from the car. When the robber was spotted, he supposedly used black magic to turn himself into a goat, but was detained anyway. See you later.